So before we get started, there was a question that came in from a listener that I can't just answer them via the fan mail site. So I thought I would answer it on the show today. They asked, how can I learn more about you? Because I'm interested. And I was like, well, the way you can learn more about me and my crazy ass life up to a certain point, because I haven't finished it yet, is Dana Wilkey's story collection in the Patreon. There's a bunch of my stories with celebrities and other things that have happened over the years. And there's also shows called the Dana Wilkey Origin Story Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that takes you up through a bunch of juicy stuff and stops. And everyone keeps asking when I'm going to do Part 5. And I'm waiting. And there's a reason I'm waiting. And it's going to be a whopper when I drop it. You're going to go, what? And that's coming. But for now, if you want to get up to date and learn more about me, that's the best way to do it. No matter where you're listening to this, in the description of the audio, or if you're watching on YouTube, you will find a link to the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon to sign up. The reason people can send me fan mail is because I release some of the episode free on all listening platforms and YouTube. And so the people that start off with that don't necessarily know yet how to get to the Patreon. So there it is. Hope that helps. Let's get into today's long but juicy episode. Please make sure you use the time codes, okay? There's more time codes in the Patreon than there are in the listening platforms, because obviously I don't want to tell people a bunch of stuff that they're missing. Okay, let's get going.
Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on. Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty. Come on. Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci on Marty. Come on. Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Hi, you guys. So let's just get started with Salt Lake City. As you guys know, you all ask me to do this every week, so I am, because I have a huge knowledge base of the women and also, their scandals. So it's kind of fun to do with me. If you don't know what episode we're up to, we are on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 6, Episode 8. We're on the second part of this Below Deck mashup, or Below Mediterranean, if you want to get really specific. And we're on Captain Jason's boat. And the women are all exhausted at this point and have been fighting extremely hard. But oddly, there seems to be no repercussions, meaning no one's holding grudges. They're just seemingly having these horrific fights, and then they just seem to forget. Who am I thinking of in particular? Heather Gay and Lisa Barlow. Heather Gay says she thinks that Lisa Barlow is the one who's been leaking all the tea to the bloggers. She doesn't bring up the allegation that has been brought up several times by the cast members that Lisa has finstas, which means she's actually doing the, gossip and commentary. But Heather decides to do a whole thing about how Lisa Barlow is the one behind the tea to the bloggers, which is getting it out so they can rally people against certain housewives, is the idea behind this. Now, this is ironic because I think all of the women at one point or another, I could pinpoint to specific examples of them doing this that I know of, me personally. And yes, some of the people would surprise you, which I alluded to in last week's episode, but all the same, they did. They did, which is why they'll never say they didn't publicly, because if they did, they know I'd prove that they did. So they don't like that. Okay, so, and I don't want to do that either, because I've told you guys, nobody is guilty for looking up gossip or even spreading it online anymore, because it's part of the Bravo ecosystem. It is imperative to keeping the show moving. However, where this becomes bad is when housewives start to just make up stuff or scandals that aren't real. Now, that is problematic for numerous reasons. Number one, it becomes difficult to clarify what is legitimately a concern about someone's life and what is just some nonsense some person threw out at someone to cause them a pain in the ass week or damage their marriage or whatever. So you may wonder, well, Dana, what are the levels of rumors, right, that we should take in consideration or find truthful versus a false one? Well, let me give you an example. This week's episode is a perfect example for us to use as a case study. So let's take an incident from this week. We have this explosive scene that happens where we see an allegation thrown at Meredith Marks, and it's thrown by Brittany at their dinner that, Captain Jason's chef has cooked for them. It's the zombie dinner. You probably saw clips of this flying around where Meredith takes her thing off her head that's like a knife or something as a Halloween costume and chucks it across the room. She's gotten very physical lately, Meredith, I've noticed. Well, what triggers this reaction? Brittany throws out that she saw on TikTok a video, and you hear the video being played on camera in a kind of cut to scene where Brittany is playing it for Whitney about Meredith. Now, it might surprise you that Whitney wanted to see this video that Brittany had that was all over Instagram about Seth cheating on Meredith because she's supposedly friends with Meredith. But it turns out she's not tight with Meredith anymore because Meredith has switched sides and now is friends with Lisa. And although Whitney also did that to kind of save her job at a certain point, the situation is that she doesn't trust anyone close to Lisa behind the scenes. So this was kind of her way, I think, of demonstrating that, at least to Brittany. And it does appear that in this current season, Brittany, Heather Gay, and Whitney have decided to do a alliance. Now, if you remember, I was like, what the hell is this video they're talking about? How is it possible that none of the sleuths I know in the Bravo landscape, who are the best of the best, really, none of them had seen this video, which appeared from the way they used it in a clip, that it was like someone actually telling a first-hand story. So I went out and actively tried to find this firsthand story to play it for you guys on the show today. And I reached out to several influencers that I know do the deep dive. And I was like, have you seen this video? And all of them said, no, I haven't seen this video in the way that they're showing it on the show. So I kept looking, and then I found this account, which was KezL-T, okay, KezL-T on Instagram. And she had done a video about the video, which they played on Salt Lake City. Now let's listen to what she says about it. And then I'm going to describe the receipt she presents.
How my TikTok ended up on this week's Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and give you a little backstory. So as you saw, Brittany brought up the rumor she saw on TikTok to Meredith about Seth possibly stepping out of the marriage. Here's the clip that they played. Oh, and some Salt Lake City tea. Allie Road, my friend's Uber driver last month in Columbus, Ohio, showed her a picture of Seth with his mistress because she was their Uber driver 6 months ago. She didn't get the pic I needed to see. So that video was me reading from the comment section of a viral post asking Bravo fans to spill their wildest insider gossip. And when I say wild, I mean there were some pretty crazy ones. The comment about Seth and Meredith was just one of several that I read. And if you watch the full video, it's pretty clear I was reading them like I was gossiping with my closest girlfriends. I was definitely not claiming anything as fact. I didn't talk to any of the housewives. Production actually reached out, said that one of the women wanted to use the clip during a taping the next day and asked for permission. That is literally all I knew. I had no idea it would lead to one of Meredith Marks' most iconic lines. Andy even quoted Meredith's line on Watch What Happens Live that night, so I was honestly screaming. But I gotta say, Brittany showing up and shaking things up at that table that night, I respect it. If Meredith hadn't made that comment about her taking a shot or having a drink after puking, I don't know if Brittany would have brought it up at dinner the way she did. She did say on the after show that she would have rather told her separately from the group until certain events transpired. But hey, that's Housewives.
So now having a little more context about it, you understand that this is crowd gossip. And actually, when you listen to the post itself, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Its grammar is not great. I wish they had uploaded it to AI ahead of time and then submitted the comment, but they didn't. But needless to say, crowd gossip usually is based in some truth, although people are speculating and they're jumping to conclusions. And of course, she did ask for the wildest stories, and so this follows. So you take this with a grain of salt, and then you look at other information to determine if you believe it or not, and whether or not it should have really been brought up on the show based on what people know about Meredith on the couch. cast. So that post is done on April 4th, 2025. So within a day or so, she gets this tea after asking everybody for their craziest gossip stories. So this is now April 4th, 2025 we're talking about. Now, the tea says that this photo was shown to this Uber driver just last month. So this would have been in March of 2025 that the Uber driver, if it was true, seen this photo of Seth with the mistress in Ohio 6 months before. So at some point, allegedly, this all happens in September of 2024-ish time frame that this person was their Uber driver with the mistress. Now, to be fair, Seth Marks was in Ohio at this period of time. He's working full-time as the co-chief merchant, senior vice president of merchandising for Big Lots. So I guess it could be true. And he does suddenly take a job in a different state in February of 2025, which I suppose could be that something happened and he had to suddenly leave. I'm not saying that's not possible. But Meredith really found this offensive and she was like, we are in a monogamous relationship now. And, he didn't cheat on me as far as she's concerned. So there's that. But the fact that Big Lots corporate headquarters is based in Columbus, Ohio, and that's where this all allegedly occurred, kind of gives it credibility. So what do I think might be going on here? Well, in this particular instance, I think it's possible that Seth was with maybe a coworker and they were in the Uber together and maybe they were partying a little bit over work or something. And this Uber driver may have guessed that it was a mistress, but it takes a lot to be an actual mistress. Like you have to be with somebody repetitively. Lots of girls working in the company, though. I looked. Anyway, I don't want to do this to Meredith. Poor Meredith. I mean, do they spend a lot of time apart? Has the marriage had rocky moments? Sure. But it would be really shocking to think that Seth would risk his marriage falling apart right now with things going so well for them in an optics standpoint. But I suppose anything is possible. But I hope in this case, it is just crowd gossip. However, what is the big deal here? Well, it's that Bravo makes it sound like the girl who's reading the video is actually, the Uber driver who saw the photo, or like just that it had a lot more legitimacy behind it. It wasn't given in context. Also, I feel very bad for the influencer who signed their contract. So the next explosive drop comes from Angie Katsanevis. And she decides to say to Bronwyn that Lisa Barlow told her that she had a friend that was in New York. And that friend said that Todd smelled like beans and was making out with one of her girlfriends in, New York. And Bronwyn calls Todd and says to him, like, listen, did you cheat on me? We don't hear what he says, but I'm sure he was like, probably dismissed her and told her to go F herself because she's on the show. And why is she, allowing this to continue where his name's dragged through the mud? But I'd say Bronwyn is continuing on the show because she's probably trying to get an exit strategy away from Todd, if I was a gambling woman. Why do I say that? Because it doesn't take a brain surgeon to see that Bronwyn was in, a hot mess in her youth and she needed rescuing, and Todd rescued her, and she's put up with this shit for years and probably knows that he's cheated on her more than one time and has no idea what he does in New York because he probably doesn't communicate it to her, and he always has a good reason to stay for a long period of time away from home. So how would she know if he was sleeping with, prostitutes, women, strippers, whatever? She wouldn't. And she wouldn't be able to ask him because he would shut her down if she did and make it like awful for her where she might feel like at risk. We already know Todd cheated on her on the show. It came out and she admitted that. Just to refresh her memory, Bronwyn's daughter in season 5, episode 14 saw a flirty text conversation between Todd and another woman on his iPad, leading her to confront him. And then Bronwyn said that when she did confront him, it wasn't a physical affair. And, she really felt like he was just having an emotional connection with this woman that was inappropriate. And that's all that transpired. And it happened a couple years ago, she said. To me, being that I was with a guy who was much similar to Todd, not old, but similar in personality to Todd, who had a double life, who every time I brought it up, used his high intellect and his sophisticated PhD and everything else to make it so that I wouldn't ask too many questions. And when he went away, he would put me in a position where he was like, I'm looking after our family's investment. I'm looking after, I got to go make money to support your lavish lifestyle. I've got to spend weeks away because I've got to be here for the, guys here. And then, of course, if you do anything out of line, they immediately make you the bad guy and they're the victim. I could write Bronwyn's story in a book like a psychic, and she would think I was real. From what I'm gathering, her relationship is like, just from watching how he behaves with her and his job. So the thing is here, the gossip that Lisa Barlow drops about Bronwyn, to me, is real. And the reason I think it's real, besides all the things I've said so far, is Lisa also said it off camera, whispered it at the table to Angie Katzenevas. And I actually don't think she thought that it was going to come out in the way that it did this season. It wasn't premeditated, I don't think. Maybe she thought someday Angie K would get pissed and drop it, but I don't think Lisa intentionally weaponized this thing. I think she was saying to a friend, you won't believe what I know about this bitch, and said it under her breath, like we do in Housewives Land. And by the way, I talk to many housewives and we all talk like this, and it's not because we're trying to get shit out on a show, because I'm not even on a show. We're just talking. No, that's not everyone. There are certain housewives friends of mine that are constantly afraid of their friends getting in trouble, so they don't want to, talk too much. But believe me, when we get going and there's no risk of it coming out, publicly, they're gossiping with me like the best of them. Now, you can remember that Bronwyn backtracked hard this cheating storyline. She really went with it at first, and then she backtracked off it. Todd got upset and punished her probably pretty good, I'd say, for it. And so she was, rethinking that, and then she probably died when Angie K said this on camera. Now, the truth is, Bronwyn should have been mad at Angie K, not Lisa Barlow. Lisa may have whispered it to her, but Angie K called it out on national TV, make no mistake. And so the fact that Bronwyn directed that at Lisa was really funny to me, being that I've been on the show and have had things like that happen, aka Brandi Glanville in season 2 with my ex, who was cheating on me, but I didn't know it and she had no proof. But I have no doubt the producers probably mentioned to her that my guy and I had a really strange relationship and he was kind of weird and he was always gone when they were filming, and maybe all those things made them think to say it to her. Something like that happened for sure. Now, do you guys remember that Bronwyn had 3 lawsuits filed in 2018, 2023, and 2024 related to people being attacked by her boxer dogs? One was with an Instacart delivery driver, another was with a Amazon delivery driver, and another one was a Utah woman who was attacked by their boxer while was being walked on Split Rail Trail in Park City. And there was a dog trainer involved. Anyway, in the first one, the November 2016 incident, where it's just a random woman attacked on the hike, which was filed in March of 2018, in that lawsuit, it's called out that Todd and Bronwyn have separate residences in terms of where they really reside. According to the court documents filed in that case, Bronwyn and Todd were living in 2 separate states between 2016 and 2018. And Bronwyn was in Utah and Todd was in California. So they weren't that together during this 2-year period, just to say it. If you were wondering what part of California Todd was in, it was San Francisco. So now we find Todd in a similar situation where his equity firm is out of New York and he's supposedly based in Park City, Utah with Bronwyn, but it appears that he's spending most of his time in New York and he's just coming home a little bit here and there. So this almost seems like a duplicate scenario to what they were doing in 2016 to 2018. This is why I think that cheating story could be true. I don't think Lisa made that one up. And I do think he probably smells like beans. Ew. Now, if I want to go even deeper, I can tell you that Todd met Bronwyn, as you guys know, in San Francisco in 2014. She's working in finance. She's trying to solicit his business for the firm she works with. They date, fall in love, whatever happens. And they get married in 2016. But right after they get married, Todd is mainly living in San Francisco and she's living in Park City, per the court documents. And this happens all the way up to 2018. And then he's in New York. So at what point is he actually always with her that she knows he isn't cheating? Also, Todd's main residence wasn't in Park City, Utah. It was in San Francisco. He buys the Park City property for Bronwyn, I think, to be close to her family probably, in 2015 and plants her butt over there where she resides. And he's mainly in San Francisco doing his day-to-day work there at that time. They're living separately, as mentioned, all the way through till 2018. Then it appears that Todd decides to upgrade Bronwyn's house, his second home, and gets the mansion that he and her are in now in 2021. So, I mean, at a minimum, maybe they weren't literally living separately. They were just going back and forth between houses. But his main residence, per his court documents, was San Francisco during this time, and Bronwyn's living her own separate life. Well, you know, what can I tell you? Did you guys know that Todd Bradley was married before? I'm not sure how many of you guys know that. She's not been brought up on Salt Lake City yet. I'm sure at some point she will be. Her name was Margaret Bradley. Now, what's nice about Margaret Bradley was she married Todd when he was 22 years old, so he hadn't made a dime, and they're both the same age, 66, nearly 70. God bless her. And she is with him for 28 years. And then they go through a 3-year divorce, and Bronwyn meets Todd Bradley 2 years after the divorce is finalized. So there's no shenanigans there. But the thing is, she only gets $14.9 million, which sounds like a lot of money as you say it out loud, but in truth, that's derived from only two main sources. One was a spousal payment for $4 million that Todd gave her as a flat fee to walk away from the marriage. And the other $10 million was from selling their, family home that they had as an asset, which she got. So in total, she got $14 million, but that seemed to me pretty cheap considering the fact that Todd Bradley was making something like $800,000 a year in bonuses at Hewlett-Packard. He also allegedly made net $720,000 for the year in 2009 when this is all happening, but he grossed $10 million. Ooh, that's quite a write-off. Anyway, I hope I'm understanding that correctly, but that's what I think happened there. And so when you look at those kind of earnings that he's making, for her to get that amount isn't a lot, given that she was there through his struggles and almost 30 years and had his children. So, I mean, how will Bronwyn do if she leaves, even though there's no prenup? I'd say he's not to be trifled with. I'd say he's pretty aggressive when you turn on him. And I'd say you're going to end up with very little if you're not careful, because I think he plays hard. He even made his wife pay her own legal fees, to give you an idea, which I'm sure was a few $100,000 in the end. But yeah, kind of painting a picture, if you will. Now, I've done my deep dive on Todd Bradley's career, and what I can tell you is, although he seems on the surface to be very successful, when he starts to meet Bronwyn Newport in San Francisco, he is licking some wounds because he had some things go down at Hewlett-Packard that weren't the best during his reign as head of HP's PC and printing division. And he was around during the Michael Lynch debacle as well, the guy who died on his yacht mysteriously in Europe after he won his criminal trial. Now, meanwhile, Todd's division at HP isn't doing well. He's the head of the PC division, as I mentioned, and his coworkers feel that although he was once one of the titans in growing the PC business for Hewlett-Packard, that he's made some some decisions that haven't been good for the company by missing opportunities, and therefore those are being reflected in weak quarterly results for Hewlett-Packard. But to be fair, also Hewlett-Packard was kind of a mess at this time. So he ends up getting demoted and asked to focus on China. And soon after, as I mentioned, he quits and he gets a golden parachute of, I think, $14 million. But this is right around the time when he quits that he meets Bronwyn. And so I'd say he was licking some wounds at the time that he met her. And then sadly, after he has this nightmare at Hewlett-Packard, he signs on to a company called Mozito. And in February 2019, the founder, Michael Liberty, is indicted by federal prosecutors for criminal fraud. And he's accused of misleading shareholders and diverting millions of dollars for personal experiences like interior decorating. And unfortunately for Todd Bradley, he's CEO while Liberty is orchestrating this fraud scheme that defrauds 200 investors out of $48 million. So not a good look. And that's 2019. Remember the dates of the other stuff I've been telling you along the way here. Well, thankfully, Todd got his act together, probably learning from all of these little obstacles that came up in his corporate career as he, begins to venture out into the unknown, gets out of the cushy brick and mortar job, and he starts his own private equity company that takes advantage of semiconductor manufacturing technology. So that's where he's focusing on with his private equity company so that they can create microchips from raw materials like silicon. And I think he's trying to take advantage of the CHIPS Act from 2021 to 2022 in the United States, where they're offering huge incentives to companies that are doing semiconductor work as long as they're in the US. And that's really the basic, gist of it. So it seems like he's corrected a lot of his mistakes, but I'd say he's pretty busy in New York. And, it's surprising to me that Bronwyn wouldn't be there with him, even with the show. It's clear that Todd and Bronwyn have a strong connection over her daughter, which he kind of raised, besides his other children. So for me, Bronwyn's reaction on the show was upset and shock, but also kind of disbelief. But I mean, she has to think it's possible because of who it came from, as much as she could think it's not possible. And I'd say that him being away a lot does make her think when it's brought up to her. She probably puts it out of sight, out of mind when he's not around and tells herself a lot of stuff. And then when someone brings up something like this, she can't help but think, oh, well, he's away a lot. Right. So on that one, I feel like there's a good basis there to believe it's true. Poor Angie Katsanevas is barely surviving episode 8. She was throwing up all night the first day. Then she kind of gets seasick again, but she muscles through. Then she cuts her hand playing in costumes that Bronwyn brought onto the boat, and she's gushing blood. And so there's that. Meanwhile, another altercation happens with Meredith on this week's episode. She's at the beach frolicking with the girls, and they're all pretty drunk. And Mary goes and says to Meredith, I think you're boring and I don't think you're a good friend to Lisa, and I don't even really like Lisa, but I'm just saying that because I don't think you are. And Meredith is like, well, maybe, you should back off and not judge me and, stay out of our business and this and that. Anyway, they have a fight. And so this is the end of Mary and Meredith's relationship, which I never really thought was that real anyway, because Meredith was well aware of the cult rumors and all the scandals with Mary. And I do think she liked Mary and would protect her to a certain degree, but I don't think she wanted to be super close with someone with those types of scandals around her, just knowing Meredith the way she is. So I think she was kind of like, yeah, she's nice enough and I'll just keep my distance beyond that. And as we all know, it's Mary's way or the highway, and it's Meredith's way or the highway. So that's never going to work out well on a reality show for a long-term friendship. Well, that's pretty much it for the episode that matters. Lisa and Bronwyn are dead to each other. Heather and Lisa are trying to sweep that they both think that each other are dropping gossip through influencers on everybody and getting the fans to rally in certain directions. It appears that it's Lisa and Meredith against Heather, Whitney, and Brittany. And then there's this weird offshoot of Mary and Angie K, who seems to be just taking on whoever she can. So that's it. Kind of an unusual situation. I did hear on the ground that Lisa and her husband do have some issues in real life. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think it's going to be okay. They're manageable, but they exist. So it turns out that Denise Richards' restraining order was a success. It came out on Friday afternoon that indeed Aaron Phypers has a restraining order now against him for 5 years. He can't have a gun. He can't go close to Denise Richards' work, home, car. He also has to turn in any firearms he has. He has to return the laptop that he allegedly took from Denise Richards, any videos, photos of any kind that could compromise her or breach her security or her privacy have to be returned to her. And so this was a big win for her. And Aaron was very worried about being able to pay his legal fees. His lawyers were jumping up and down because they were like, what about spousal support? And the judge is like, that has to be figured out later. For now, I'm only dealing with this. And then the lawyers were also worried that Aaron Phypers would be deported back to Canada. And I suppose that would be like, boom, see you later. Back to Toronto you go. Now, I guess his family would have to follow him because he's been the breadwinner up until now, and they'll need to go back and get their benefits from the Canadian government if they, need social welfare or whatever at this point. But Aaron is on a long track now, and I don't think he's going to have the money to keep going. He's going to run out of steam. And so I would imagine he is going to end up back in Canada. So there's that. I don't know if that's a happy ending or how you want to look at that whole thing, but thank God he's out of her life. That's all I'm going to say. And he can't prey on any more women because I do feel like he has a pattern. Anywho, that's a quick Denise Richards touch base. Obviously, the trailer to Beverly Hills dropped this week, which we're all very excited about. And it appears the new girl, who I've already covered a lot in the Patreon, may have a criminal background that we weren't aware of. For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?